Hey guys, welcome back to Sword of Truth Apologetics, okay? Welcome back to the courtroom, I should say. I'm Chris Lockwood, and this is Sword of Truth Apologetics. The series is called Proving Christianity. Nothing is assumed, everything is tested, okay? So, here we are, Season 1, Episode 3. And members of the jury, I would like to enter into the evidence, Exhibit C, okay? And this is called the moral law, all right? Why good and evil are real, okay? So, welcome back to the courtroom. Last time we entered Exhibit B into evidence. Truth exists, logic exists, both point beyond matter. And what else did we kind of learn? The universe is intelligible, okay? Which points to what? A mind, all right? Today we present another exhibit, one every person has experienced. Have you guys ever really thought about, just, in passing moments, why do good and evil feel objectively real, all right? Now, this is the world everyone lives in, okay? This isn't just pointing out that good and bad are some higher belief and higher moral standard. No, everybody lives as if these moral standards exist. What does that tell you, okay? Turn on the news, all right? There's war, murder, human trafficking, and abuse. Do you notice something? People don't merely say, I don't like that. That's tasteless TV. No, they say, that's what? That's wrong. Not unpopular. That is wrong. Okay? They are acting as if a higher moral standard exists. C.S. Lewis, in his book Mere Christianity, this is what he made his base argument on. He argued that you have the physical sciences, okay? Physics and chemistry are about as real as science can get, all right? These are two sciences that are extremely disciplined in the scientific method, are tested, hypothesized, and you don't really get to say it's real unless you've tested it and using the scientific method. Well, C.S. Lewis puts the moral law into that category as well. Isn't objective truth, right? Physics, we can discern objective truth, and chemistry, we can observe objective truth because we tested it, right? We use the scientific method to test what we already see, to prove those hypotheses. Well, in this instance, everybody seems to have this sense of right and wrong. It therefore becomes like a scientific law, okay? Even though it's an abstract concept, it's not a physical object, all right? And science usually deals with the physical. No, C.S. Lewis noticed something actually remarkable. When people argue, they assume the other person already knows the rule, right? You promised, okay? When I yell at you and say you promised, that's because I know that if you promise, you shouldn't lie. You should keep your promises, right? That's not fair. You should not have done that, all right? So these are people that are participating in some type of moral obligation and moral law where both know the rules, right? That word, should, changes everything. Lewis observed, when we break the moral law, we don't deny it exists. We just make excuses on why we couldn't follow it that day, right? Well, I wanted to keep my promise, but I was really tired. Okay, we don't ever say that, I don't have to keep a promise. What are you talking about? That's your morals. That's not my morals. No one ever says that. Everybody knows they shouldn't break a promise. But somebody, when they don't follow through on their promise, they're going to say something like, what? I was tired that day. Oh, they deserved it. They were mean to me one time. Or I had no choice. I couldn't do it that time. But notice what we're doing. We're not denying the moral law. We're not denying the rule. We're explaining why we failed to keep it. We're making an excuse, which proves there is this moral law that exists, right? That we're appealing to. Excuses only make sense if a standard already exists. There's a standard everybody appeals to. and that is the moral law. Now, objective, okay, remember we know what the word objective means, objective truth, okay? Objective versus preference, okay, or subjective, if like for a better term. There's a difference, objective versus preference, between preference and morality. Okay, now people do have preferences, we admit that. Not everybody has the 100% same morality, okay? But preferences are chocolate, I might like chocolate, you might not. Sports teams, we have preferences on who we like. Favorite music, those are preferences, okay? But notice this, murder, rape, child abuse, genocide, those aren't preferences, those are moral judgments. Now let's talk about the is-ought problem. This is where we build from my last episode, really, okay? Logic tells us how we ought to think. Morality tells us how we ought to live. Matter cannot produce an ought in either case, can it? Atoms have no obligations. Chemistry has no duties. Gravity has no morality. Science tells us the what. Science tells us what is. Morality tells us what ought to be. Okay? Science, the what is, what's observable. The morality, what should be. Okay? Does the observable live up to that moral standard that we all appeal to? Okay? Now let's talk about my friend Ravi Zacharias. And I hate to, every time we bring up his name, say I know that he kind of messed up toward the end. But again, his arguments stand, all right? The objective truth that he discovered stands, whether he did something bad or not at the end of his life, okay? It still stands. He was a very intelligent person, and he made some very good points. And Ravi often said, when there is no moral law, there can be no evil. And if there is no evil, there is nothing to protest. Okay? Yet every human being protests evil. Why? Because we know deep inside some things really are wrong. Okay? Now let's talk about evolution, right? Because really all religions in the world and all, everybody's philosophy breaks down to only a few categories, and this helped me. It seems a lot of times that there's a lot of ways you can view the world. You can be a monotheist, you can be a polytheist, you can be an evolutionist, atheist. But really, it just breaks down to there's people that believe in a creator God, there's people that believe in no God, there's people that believe in multi-gods. That's it. There's three categories that every religion fits in. So there's not a lot of religions like people are going to think like, oh, which religion is right? There's so many of them. There's three basic religions actually out there. Now, evolution, we're going to deal with one of them. Now, evolution tends to be the atheists' argument, right? That's kind of their Bible. Darwin's Origin of the Species is their Bible, and Charles Darwin is their prophet, okay? And they're as religious as anybody, all right? And if you're atheists out there, I know you're going to hate for me to say that, but it's true. I know you guys like to fashion yourselves as these free-thinking, logical people that don't have to appeal to religion, but actually your belief in evolution is religious, okay? Because you don't have all of the answers. You have to take so much on faith. But somehow you've styled yourself to think that you don't, that the science is in fact reality. But the science you believe in, evolution is one of those things that it's an origin of the species. We do not have all the scientific facts on evolution. It's definitely not proven. So you have faith as much as somebody has faith in the Bible. Okay, so but anyways, evolution, right? Some argue morality evolved. Okay. Evolution may explain why we cooperate. Okay. It cannot explain why we ought to. Okay. This is something that evolution cannot explain. If you look at evolution as an accident, right? The Big Bang is an accident. All of the simple hydrogen atoms evolving into planets and stars as accidents. And then the Earth creating itself as an accident, evolving as you you evolutionists say. And all of these accidents happen on Earth, and you have from fish to people like us, without a God actually, creating the evolutionary process. So the only way you can believe in evolution is if you believe believe in atheism, is if you have to say that life created itself, and evolution is the only explanation for that. So I can understand why you cling to it, but let's really look at it from a logical perspective, okay, and from a truth perspective, okay. And again, I'll start over again. Evolution, some argue, morality evolved. Now, evolution may explain why we cooperate. It cannot explain why we ought to. Survival is not obligation. Okay? Now again, let's listen to C.S. Lewis. Lewis wrote, "A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. So how do we recognize injustice? Unless justice is real." Okay? So the evolutionary atheistic presupposition has a big problem, because where does morality come from? If we're just mammals who created themselves, and survival of the fittest is how we get to being a greater, species, then lying, cheating, stealing, and raping can that really be called evil? If that's just the way nature is, you have a big problem with morality in that type of thinking, in that material, type of thinking, in that material world where accidents, created us, and it just doesn't really, it's the internal truth test. It just doesn't really pass for me. And when you kind of look at the moral law, it's really going to give atheism a hard time, because moral law has to come from a moral lawgiver. It really does. Moral law just didn't create itself, okay? And didn't just come from some accident, okay? The moral law, in fact, I can do this on a separate video, but the moral laws were actually here before the physical universe was. And you can prove that by understanding that if life did have a beginning, which physicists prove that there was a beginning now to the Big Bang. Well, life wasn't eternal, okay, in the physical world at least. And in order to have the Big Bang at all, you had to have had scientific laws, or the law of nature as we call it, right? Physics and chemical laws, okay? Acting in order for the Big Bang to happen, which means they preceded the physical universe, because the physical universe, if it started at a Big Bang, okay, then the scientific laws preceded it. What does that mean? That means that if law preceded the physical universe, who was the lawgiver? That's in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. The lawgiver was God, okay? Or a mind. We'll just call him a mind for now, okay? All right, now let's look at the Christian explanation here, all right? I've kind of went over a little bit of the material explanation, the atheistic explanation, and it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't pass the truth test. Now let's look at the Christian explanation. Now let's introduce Scripture. Romans 2:14 through 15. Paul says God's law is written on the human heart. Now that makes a lot more sense. Once we build each exhibit up, A, B, and C, truth to logic to the moral law, because we're logical thinking species, that how would we get the moral law? It must be written on our hearts, okay? Paul says God's law is written on the human heart. This doesn't mean everyone obeys it, okay? It just means everyone recognizes what it is. It's something intrinsic in a human being. It's something we all have, okay? And it also separates us from the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom does not have the moral law. This is only something unique to human beings. And we've already established that we could have been evolved with it. The moral law did not evolve, okay? So obviously, it seems to me that we were created unique. Well, even if you don't want to go to created yet, if you don't think we prove that, we human beings are unique in that we have the moral law. So we have a higher understanding than the animals. Okay, and that's exactly what the Bible said, all right? That we have, let us make man in our image. Okay, it's exactly what the Bible teaches. All right. Genesis 1:27, human beings bear God's image. Therefore, morality isn't invented, it is reflected. Okay, so what's the verdict? Let's review the evidence. Truth exists. Logic exists. Morality exists. All three are universal. All three are objective. All three are binding. And all three are, get this, immaterial. None are adequately explained by matter alone. This is why you have philosophy. You have science that gives you the how, but the science can never explain the why. You guys getting that now? I'm going to say that again. The science, we're observing what we see. The science can tell you the how. It cannot tell you the why. That is what philosophy is for, as a discipline. Philosophy will answer the why, okay? And these are two distinct issues. So when the evolutionist tries to explain the why with the how and say there's no God, it's a fallacy. And the evidence continues to point toward mind, okay? So in closing, I would like to address the jury now. Today's exhibit raises another question. It just begs another question. It raises another question, okay? We have 3 exhibits now. If morality is real, why do human beings possess consciousness, free will, and the longing for meaning? This is Exhibit D, okay? One second here. All right. Always, court is adjourned. Examine the evidence. Render your verdict and put your comments in the comment section. Let's talk about it. Truth cuts both ways, guys. Again, examine the evidence, render your verdict. Court is adjourned. Subscribe to Sword of Truth Apologetics, and I'll see you next time for episode 4. Thanks, guys.